Okay, guys, here we're going on with day 2 of characteristics of history. So you should have that second worksheet there in front of you for these activities that we're going to go through. And again, remember, past is just something that can't be debated, and history is something that is interpreted. So for your number 3 mini activity, and it's printed out there for you, it is discussing the Black Death. Okay, so go ahead and read through that information. And when you're through reading through that information, go ahead and answer the question, what do you think this account might demonstrate about history? Okay, so we're going to give you a little bit of time to go ahead and read through that, and probably should take, again, about 5 minutes or so. And once you finish reading and, again, you can discuss, go ahead and write that out, and we'll talk about the characteristic. Okay, so this is basically a characteristic called conjuncture. This happened a long, long time ago. But this is various circumstances, and all these different places can come together and have a major impact in the area that it did not begin. This is sometimes called the ripple effect. You might have heard about throwing a stone into the water and having those ripples go out and out and out and out. So that is contingency. And sometimes things come together in other ways, sometimes due to individual actions, sometimes accidents, sometimes coincidences. This is also something that can relate to cause and effect. So obviously, the whole pandemic that we are involved in right now can go back over a year and a half ago and go to conjuncture. There's kind of a correlation there, isn't there, between what we're going through right now and what we just read about with the spread of the Black Death. So conjuncture, that's just another characteristic of history. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about is imperialism. This is actually something we're going to be studying as far as American imperialism. But in this particular case, you're given a list of the effect of some of the things that happened after England, or Great Britain, made India a colony. So this is, as it says, it's not a complete list, but I want you to read through it and think about this, and take, again, about 5 minutes, and you should be able to then read through the list and come up with an answer to that question. What do you think this list might demonstrate about history? What are some of the good things that you read about, the bad things you read about, and answers kind of an age-old question: do the means justify the ends? So this is the list, and you have got that, and go through that. And again, this is an activity that probably should take about 5 minutes to read through, kind of analyze it, maybe 7 minutes on this one. And again, you can talk about this with a partner. So this is a very interesting one, and one that I think is very, very important. Part of history that's called the gray area. This is saying that there's no definite black and white, but there's a whole lot of gray in history. Now, there are some things that we can agree on, that are genocide is evil. there are some evil is very, very real in this world. But are there two sides to every story? Do you have do you need to just make a snap judgment and say, well, this was bad and this is good? Um, Something you've got to look at evidence. You've got to pull things out of that. Be wary of anyone trying to take in something out of history instead of trying to explain it within history. So when we're looking at presidents, for instance, were there some good things that they did? Were there some bad things that they did? Does one aspect of somebody's character doom them forever? I mean, we've talked about this. We've seen careers ended because of a stupid mistake. I'm thinking about the comedian that posed Kathy Griffin with the severed head of the president, ruined her career forever and ever. And just, different things. Is she all bad? And some people defend her and say she was a comedian. She was trying to be funny. She made a horrible mistake. We shouldn't judge. Well, other people say, well, that was beyond what should have been done. There's, you're going to see two sides to things. Don't think in absolutes. And the gray area is something that we will be talking about. We'll be talking about that with leaders, with events, with certain wars. Just looking at both sides, coming up with consensus, and trying to keep an open mind. So that's called the gray area. Okay, let's move on. Okay, in this next activity, you're going to be reading two passages, and both passages deal with Columbus and the fact that Columbus in 1492 discovered America. Of course, you discovered a place that already had millions of people, but these are two very different views on Columbus and Columbus Day. You'll note, and we'll probably be talking about, in some states they have changed Columbus Day from Columbus Day to Indigenous People Day. So this is a debate that's still going on. It's going to take you a little while to read these two very different passages, and then I want you to think about that. I want you to start out and really state what the first passage is saying real briefly, and then state what the second passage is saying, and what is the difference? What are the difference between these two historians? Okay, so take about 10 minutes and let's look at this activity, and we'll talk about the characteristic that this one demonstrates. Okay, so this is a history. This characteristic of history is called the debate. So, boy, do people love to debate their history. Remember, history is always the perspective looking back. People change their attitudes about how good or how bad or how beneficial it was, how much it influenced our present. This is different people, equal different perspective, equals different interpretations, equal different histories. And our history books have actually evolved over time. There was the debate over the fact that the people who were writing the history books were leaving out huge groups of people. They were leaving out African Americans, women, Native Americans, immigrants, and their influence on American society and American history books. We're going to talk about just Supreme Court cases that looked like they were correct at the time, and now we're going back and we're debating, were they correct? Were they actually constitutional? So just be aware of this when we're looking at this, that historical events can be and are still being debated. Was this a good president? Was he a bad president? Was he a good man? Was he a bad man? Did this event, did it move us forward? Did it not move us forward? Okay. So hopefully you're having some discussions in between these, and let's look at our next activity. Okay. All right. So you've got a list of some developments in history, and basically I want you to paraphrase in your own words as you read these different events. Some of them are just statements. So what can you come up with? What is a common theme or characteristics that ties these 4 statements after you break them down together? Okay, so read through them, talk it over, and see what you come up with. Okay. So some of these things, you can say, oh, we're learning from our past and we're moving forward, we're getting better. Sometimes, but sometimes it seems that we really don't learn from our past. Sometimes you've heard the expression, history repeats itself. Well, sometimes that is not necessarily a good thing. We need to learn from our history. We'll listen to a Marley song that talks about that, and the great philosopher Santayana, who says those who do not learn from their history are doomed to repeat it. I look at Afghanistan now, and where we're taking people out that had helped our troops in Afghanistan, reminds me of right at the end of, Vietnam, when the Saigon was being attacked by the communists, and we are taking people out of Saigon via helicopters, taking them out to aircraft carriers to save them because they had been assisting Americans. And so I look back at that and I say, this kind of looks like a repeat of history. The Afghanistan war, sometimes we can look at that, and the Russians failed when they tried to go in Afghanistan. I don't know whether we could consider it a failure or not, but it sure looks like the Taliban is gaining power. So this is, history is not necessarily always showing progress or improvement. We'll look at the Middle East right now. There's so much turmoil going on, and just in the world itself. So just something to think about. History is not necessarily always progress. Okay, so never forget, environment, the way it shapes us, and we in turn shape it, matters. So we'll talk about the debate on global warming, other environmental factors as far as history goes. You can see here and here the debate on global warming, the debate on our atmosphere, and so forth. So when we look at all these things, is all history propaganda? Well, a lot of history is propaganda. You're looking at who wrote this. When we're looking at the Civil War, they represent both sides as being godly men and believing that God was on their side. You see, this is bringing down the Colonel, a sex scandal of the Gilded Age, the powerless woman who took on Washington. Good book, by the way. And we've got. Remember, books are written from a perspective, and some of them are try to be very neutral and just present the facts. But quite often, you've got to look at it. Who wrote it and why did they write it? Okay, so types of history. collective memory of society. We've got oral histories, primary sources. Those can be biased, those can be distorted. We've got recovered history when where the archaeologists are uncovering things that are changing the way we think about how things are settled or how long we've even been here. And then we've got invented or reinvented history. Fake news, myths, fabrications, lies about the past. And sometimes that's done in a patriotic way. George Washington chopping down the cherry tree and saying, "I cannot tell a lie," to show what an honest man he was. Well, he was an honest man, but guess what? That story was made up. The cowboys of the Old West, if you look at any of those old movies, most of those are like John Wayne, big, tall, white dudes. Well, you know, the majority of the cowboys were very, very light fellows. They were on horses all day long. And we had a lot of black cowboys. We had a lot of Hispanic cowboys. And you don't see that too much in the depictions or in the novels or in the movies. So again, some of the motives are patriotic or just the audience itself. So we always need to keep this in mind. Okay, so finally, what you need to think about, what are the dangers of controlling and distorting people's perception of the past using history? I mean, we have debates about that right now. What should we be teaching you guys? What shouldn't we be teaching you guys? Teachers debate these things. So just think about it, and hopefully you'll having a good discussion about this. And when I get back, we will be talking about it some more. Okay, so finish up those worksheets and get those turned in. And this is a big point one, I think. I'm giving you 50 or 60 points for these worksheets. So make sure that you've got those filled out.